And it is shaping up to be quite an interesting season after all. After the Opta supercomputers said that Arsenal were already going to win the league, it seems like we will have a title race. And as an Arsenal fan, I'm quite afraid, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't quite know what happened, but everybody seemed to get, and I'm as guilty as anybody, but we also got into this mindset a couple of weeks ago of Arsenal going to walk away with it. And yeah, my doubt about Arsenal over the last 3 years has been, um, I guess over the last last 2 years particularly, has been I feel that when they come under pressure, they don't necessarily deal very well with that. And my concern was that this season they might be so far ahead they never actually feel that pressure. Because what I want to see is, are they have they developed a way of dealing with that? Can they handle it? And as a neutral, I want to see a proper title race. But I think Arsenal playing so well. Their squad looks so deep. It looks so sensibly put together. They're so coherent. They can win games in two different ways. Yeah, they had that 8-game run of not conceding, and obviously if you're not conceding, you're not losing. And you sort of feel with, particularly with their set play prowess, they're always going to score at least one. So I think we just sort of got into that rhythm of thinking that they're not going to drop enough points maybe to close the gap. And also the two obvious challenges, Liverpool and City, are not playing particularly well. But Manchester City actually, I think, are beginning to emerge. I mean, they're nothing like the side they were 2 years ago, but they've won 7 of the last 8. They were very impressive in beating an admittedly quite poor Liverpool on Sunday. So the gap's down to 4 points. And I can understand why, if you're an Arsenal fan, you're thinking, well, hang on, we've had this brilliant start. They've been hopeless. How is the gap only 4 points? How are they still just there? And of course, that's the position that they were in, for 2 of the previous 3 seasons, of being out in front and having City breathing down their necks.
Yeah, it is too close for comfort in terms of narrative. I mean, I've seen some people, probably Arsenal fans, trying to spin it the other way, saying, going into the last international break, we were ahead by 1 point. Now we're ahead by 4. Maybe we are actually making progress, but you can't help but feel that it's lining up that way, even if, as you say, City are not quite the same, especially if Rodri can't stay fit, which, may or may not be an issue. Maybe they're not the same machine, and maybe Arsenal have taken that machine quality on, but it feels like a movie we've seen before.
Yeah, it does. And I'd actually look at the Rodri situation the other way of how good are they going to be when he is fit?
Yeah.
That this is City without a reliable Rodri. If he does get himself fit and come January, February, he's back to the old Rodri, then that elevates City another 5-10%. But this City side, it's really odd to compare them to the City of stereotype. That the great City was this sort of passing possession machine, and if they got the ball, you just couldn't get it off them. And this is actually a very orthodox side. They're a really good team because they've got a really good centre forward who's in form, scoring hundreds of goals. They've got a really good left winger who's in great form. They've got a really good goalkeeper who's in good form, and it feels like we could be talking about a team from the 80s. And you've got to sort of remind yourself. I think that's maybe why they've been slightly underestimated, because we're comparing them to the sort of the Guardiola ideal, and this is nowhere near the Guardiola ideal. But maybe he's just changed what the ideal is.
Yeah, it feels like the seminal moment, the watershed, was when they beat Arsenal. It was either in 2023 or 2024 when they decided to go quite direct, and they had that 2-man game with Haaland and De Bruyne, and they just physically dominated Arsenal in that middle part of the park, and were able to play over their press, really upend the game table. The saying, if you don't like how the game is being played, you flip over the chessboard. It felt a little bit like that, where Guardiola said, okay, I'm just going to do something completely different. And everything since then has felt maybe more in that vein, where we're very far removed, as you're getting at, from the tiki-taka destruction that he used to prosecute.
Yeah, I mean, I think his great strength as a coach has been that he has constantly evolved. That you look at this side compared to the Barcelona of 2008-9, light years apart. But there have been various phases within that as well. But there's an interview he gave in January, which it made quite a splash at the time, because he said, "Yeah, my team does not play modern football now. The modern football has been played by Bournemouth, Brighton, Newcastle, and Liverpool." And the way it was interpreted at the time, and again, the way I interpreted it, was he meant you had more runners. You know, your wide players ran with the ball. And I think up to a point he did mean that. And he was an acknowledgement that the juego de posición, you know, his very patient passing football, that maybe that had become predictable and that there was a need to move on from that. But actually looking back at the interview, the thing he really focuses on is how little time there is. That the nature of the modern calendar means you have a big game every 3 days, essentially. And he was saying that you can't play the type of football he wants to play because you don't have... you can't play with a small enough squad that the whole squad can instinctively understand the system. And B, you don't have time to prepare for each individual game in the way he would like to. And so it almost feels to me this season, this is almost like passive-aggressive football from Guardiola. It's like, right, if you're not going to let me play my way, well, I'll just do it your way. Oh, you want a big centre-forward who scores 50 goals a season? Well, there you are. You want a big goalkeeper who saves all the shots? Well, there you are. Oh, you want a winger who kind of cuts in and crosses the ball? Well, there you are. But it is a very self-conscious turn to a much less sophisticated, much more simplistic form of football.
Yeah, almost, a stereotypical English style from yesteryear, as you're getting at. He could have Duncan Ferguson up top or something. Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't gone whole hog in the sense that, you look at that midfield. I mean, certainly the midfielder played against Bournemouth, and I think it was the same midfield against Liverpool, wasn't it? So 4 of the 5 are under 5'10" or under, and 3 of them are under 5'8". So Foden, Cherki, Bernardo Silva, and Doku, they're not these monsters. They're not these huge hulking beasts that we see elsewhere. They are still small and technical. I think City is still the only side this season in the Premier League not to have scored from a set play. So they're not playing full on. The sort of the Arsenal ball that everybody else seems to have adopted. But equally, it is a significant shift from the very precise possession-heavy football of before.